Today's talk is called Curiosity Cured the Writer, and it's all about the cure for fear, for procrastination, for doubt, for all of those things, all of the mindset stuff that holds us back. The cure for even, my life is so busy, I never have time to write. The cure for no one's ever gonna like my stuff. The cure for this is so much work and I just don't want to do it. The cure for everything is curiosity. And of course, I've come to this conclusion over a long period of time. I'm not someone that has a naturally happy brain, a naturally optimistic brain, and it's been a long-term process to train myself into more of a curious mindset that looks at possibilities than the mindset that looks at how challenging things are, how much work is ahead, how complicated something can be. And the real cure that I've found for my own procrastination, my own fear, has been asking myself, not how difficult this is, not how am I going to do this, but how good can this get? How far can I go? How excellent can I make this story? How captivating and complex and inspiring and invigorating can I make this story that I'm working on? As well as how much fun can I have? How much joy, how much excitement, how much um, just sheer happiness can I and sometimes humor, how much sheer happiness, whatever that looks like for a particular person, but how much can I bring into my work, and how can I have a lot more fun doing the things that I'm doing? I always think about when I was little, you used to always hear, do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I think it took me a really long time to understand that advice, and to understand that it wasn't about just finding the thing that you loved. It was also getting curious about how you can bring more of that energy into the things that you're doing. Because the truth is, and I think this is just something we all need to accept. Like, writing a book is a lot of work. Like, it takes me, on average about 120 hours to take a book from first idea to finished draft. And it also takes a lot of hours to do the marketing and like all of the pre-publishing and post-publishing work associated with this book. And like, it is a lot of work. And if we just showed up and said, I only want to do the parts that I love, um, looking at it in terms of trying to assess it and say, do I love this? Going out and finding and saying, is this the thing that I love? I think we wouldn't get very far. And it's always been a conscious effort for me to get curious and say, what is the part about this that I do love? And how can I add more of the things that I like to the work that I'm doing? So for example, when I'm doing a lot of the planning work, which can take a long time and can feel a little bit tedious at times, especially if there's research, which for me is not one of my favorite things. If there's, when I'm in that phase, I'm really thinking about the possibilities. I'm really getting curious about how can I use this information? How interesting can it get? How much fun can I have while I'm thinking up all of these story ideas or discovering this information? And then as I'm writing, because writing, it sounds so silly, writing is also not one of my favorite parts of writing. I love storytelling, and so to look at the actual writing aspect and say, how much fun can I have here? How much fun can I have in this scene, with the characters and with the scene that's unfolding, as well as um, how can I find for myself personally more enjoyment as I'm doing this? And some of it has been just looking at and experimenting with different workflows, getting curious about the way that I work best. There's again just lots of different ways to look at getting curious with the work that we're doing. And again, getting curious about how can I have more fun? How can I and for me, my curiosity is always how can I take this a layer deeper? How can I make this story even more impactful, even more complex, even more enjoyable for a reader? These are the things that I get curious about. Rather than what I think we have a tendency to do is to focus on the rules, to focus on trying to make things a certain way, and to try to essentially really like narrow stuff down. Because when we start getting curious, we're thinking expansively, we're thinking about possibilities, and there just seems to be hundreds of them, and it can feel I think it can feel really uh like we're not grounded, like we've got too much opportunity ahead of us. And that can be a little bit frightening, and we don't really know what to do with it. So we have this tendency, this human tendency, to try to put everything into a box, and to try to, again, create essentially like rules for ourselves um, to to essentially make it feel like we're more to essentially reassure ourselves that we're on track or that we're going to be successful. But I think it always backfires, because the more you say, oh, well, I need to make my book this certain way, the more you start looking at the book and saying, is it this certain way? The more you start judging it, the more you start actually creating fear around the story. And the more that you end up procrastinating or leaving it alone or not wanting to work on it, because you're kind of crushing the creativity that's involved, and you're kind of crushing the possibility that would normally come with expansiveness. And writers are creatives, and most creatives I know really thrive in that feeling of expansiveness. We really thrive in possibility. We take in the energy of that possibility, and I think we're much more motivated to keep working to fill, like to get answers to the possibilities, or to see where the possibilities will go. I think of creativity as this kind of sort of like a squishy tube that water comes through. And the more that you can hold that tube open, the better the water flows, the better the creativity flows through it. But when you start putting rules on it and you start making it rigid, all of a sudden it collapses. And unfortunately, it's kind of a weak-walled tube. So the slightest pressure can really decrease how much creativity is coming through. And not saying that we can't create a lot, by rigidly holding the tube open, but we can create so much more by letting it expand as wide as it wants to. And again, the way to do that is getting curious. And I always think it's a bit silly for me to come on here and say, we need to get curious. We need to not, put the rigid frameworks in place. We need to not put all of the rules in place in order to keep the creativity open. Because of course, I teach people how to write novels, and I teach a lot of frameworks, and I don't really teach rules, but I teach kind of the scaffolding that we can build a story on. But really, what I see my job as is I'm there with answers to the things that writers are curious about. And if you're like me, your curiosities are going to be, how do I make this book more impactful? How do I share the energy and the awesomeness of my vision with people that are going to be reading this story? You know, how do I make this a story that really works together and really clicks together? And so I'm there to provide answers to these questions that writers are curious about, as well as helping expand that creativity, helping keep the creativity tube wide open, and also helping like refocus on curiosity. Because it takes a little bit of mental training to stop judging things so much, to stop judging our work as good or bad, or our story as fantastic or not good enough. It takes work to step away from that and to really just focus on the curiosity. But curiosity is the cure. Getting curious again about how good can this get? How fun can this story be? How complex can this story be? Or how inspiring, how shocking, how whatever it is you look for in your fiction, as well as how much joy can we bring into the writing process, and how can we make writing that super fun thing that we love to do, so that it's not a job, it's something that we want to show up and do every single day, day after day after day, in order to, you know, build the books, build the author career, build everything there, and build it by maintaining that sense of creative freedom. So I think that's really the primary, you know, at the root of of everything creative wise, everything writing wise. We want to be looking for more curiosity. And that's really what I wanted to come on here and encourage today, and encourage you to get more curious about where you can get curious in your writing, in your uh, productivity setup, in your actual books that you're creating, in your author career that you're building. Where can we get more curious? What are the expansive questions that we can ask? The questions, you know, I had a coach one time who used to always say, you know, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. So how can we ask more of these creative, expansive, opening questions in our lives and in our writing?